An adapter to convert a power supply with binding posts to Anderson Powerpole connectors. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'm going to be making up an adapter that converts Anderson Powerpole to ring terminals. The purpose of that is to connect the ring terminal end to my bench power supply in the shack and into something with Anderson Powerpole connectors, which does actually include my 991A, because I have converted it over so I could use it with the try to get my words out, SOTABeams Fuser-6, which has got the Powerpole connectors on it. Bit of an inconvenience that I can't just connect Powerpole connectors into that power supply, but it's fine, I can just build one of these. I've already got something similar in use with my APRS iGate, as that radio does have Powerpole connectors on it. That's just in the kitchen behind me there, and the power supply it's currently using at the moment indeed has the binding posts on it, which is what those will go over. Now, previously fitted to the 991A was these. These are exactly the same as these, except another ham at the club has cut a little groove into that one, so it would go over the supply at the club as I took the radio up to the club. So I could easily do that, but I don't think I've got anything sharp enough to do that. So that's that going to be a complete ring, which is fine on my power supply, but not the one at the club. I think I best get cracking with this. And we've got my wires, and as I said, Halfords don't do the 27 amp rated wire in black. So a message to Halfords, please do. It gives you a good source of automotive and 12 volt rated wire. If not, I'm going to have to start getting it from 12 volt Planet, which will probably be the way forward anyway for future revisions of this. What I'll need to do is I'll need to strip the wire, and I've got to make sure these wire strippers are set right so I don't end up losing any strands, because I don't want that, because that would impair, whoops, without hitting the tripod, because I'm just stripping the wire behind here. Yeah, the idea is that I put it into the stripper. I'll actually show you what I'm doing. You'll put it into the stripper and then pull. I'm not going to do that on camera. I'm going to do that off camera. There we go. So the brown one is now stripped. Should be no missing strands or anything. If I can get that to focus, it's not focusing where I want it. It doesn't focus on shiny stuff very well. I have noticed that. Trying to focus on the table there. Anyway, I'll bring it down here. So there should be no strands missing. And that's good. And also, when you put it into a crimp, in this case, I'll just grab one of the Powerpole ones. You can actually solder these as well, which I've done with the other one of these I've made. Then that should fit in there. If I can get that to fit in there without any other strands doing anything they shouldn't. I'll just check all these strands are together first, because that will fit in there, because I've already used them on this sort of wire, so it just fits on there like that. But that might be a bit too much, but as long as it's butting up to the insulation, so I might just get away with that, so that's fine. So I'm not going to crimp that down just yet, because I need to strip the red one to a similar sort of length. So I'm going to do that off camera, behind the camera. And let's have a look-see here. Well, it's done. I've noticed this on this one, is it's not quite taken all insulation off. That's somewhat annoying, but it is going on. But as long as all of the wires are going in there, that's fine. So it will crimp down. Although that insulation will need to be sorted. So I'll just pause and I'll go sort that out. Okay, so I've managed to fix that to some degree. So let's pop it into the crimp. Just make sure it's all okay there. Make sure there's no strands sticking out and it's all going in how it should. I'm not sure it will focus on that. It really does not like to focus this far up. Yeah, that's fine, that's on there. So now that one's ready to be crimped. So I'll bring in my crimping tool. Now it says to put this one, because this is a 30 amp rated one, into the middle. So I'll show you the tool. I got this from, well, you can tell where I got it from actually. So there's the tool there. I got this one from SOTABeams, because I prefer crimping the connectors on than I do soldering these, because it's a bit of a pain in the rear. So what you would do is I'll bring this into shot actually so you can see this. If you're not familiar with the crimping tool, you'd put the crimp into here. And then with the wire, and then what you would do is you would squeeze the handle down. Then keep squeezing that. And then it should release, and that's now crimped on. That's not going anywhere. And what I will do, because it's the red one, pop it into the red shell. Now these only go on one way, and you push them in till they click, and once they're clicked in, that isn't going anywhere. So that's now one end done on the red wire. Do the other end shortly. So we'll repeat that with the brown as it is. Still a little bit of insulation on that, so I'll just sort that out. Right, so that's now sorted out. So what we'll do is we'll put this crimp onto here, like so. But what you've got to make sure you've got all the strands actually inside here. That's very, very important. So I'll do that again without any of the strands escaping. Still got one escaping. So they all have to go inside here. That's very important. It's something I learned when I worked at a local company that makes all sorts of wiring stuff for vehicles. And also they sell things like telematics and things to fleet operators. They used to make some of their own wiring harnesses with various different types of crimps. I'm not going to name that company. I'm not going to give them the publicity. So again, we'll put this into the crimping tool. So that's now in the crimping tool, and we'll squeeze the handle down until put enough force on it. Oh. Then we'll release, and that's the crimp made. I find crimped connectors more reliable than soldered ones, especially as I've discovered with PL259s. They're so much better, the crimped ones that I prefer. So this will only go into this shell one way. That's the beauty of the Anderson Powerpole connectors. That was kind of stuck. I'm going to have to just bear with me 2 seconds. Right. So let's try that again. It goes in that way, I believe. There we go. That's now in there, and that's now the power pole ends made up. And the beauty about the power pole connectors is they can be dovetailed together. So there's normally a way we do this. Now I'll show you that, if you've never done power poles before anyway. So on the Fuser-6, all the reds, with it facing me like that, are to the left. So what you would do is you would do exactly the same here. There is a way of doing this. They do. It's not actually focusing on that, so I'll just move that out of the way, because now we've. So what I would do, look, we just got to look for these, and then that's how these go. And I'll show you them plugged in shortly when I can get these to actually go together. There we go. And that is a completed lead at that end. So the idea now is that theoretically should plug into there like that. So that's the power pole end done. Now I've got to put the ring terminals on. I'm going to just trim the end down because of the two wires, because the brown one's slightly longer than the red one, and that's not quite ideal. I'll smooth the power pole crimping tool out of the way. I'll pop a link to SOTABeams website for that. So if you're wanting to buy a crimp tool, then for power pole connectors, then you can just buy one. There we go. Okay, so let's move that. So we're done with it again. So these are the ring terminals I've got. These are also Halfords. Now these are, it says actually what the sizes are on these. I'll see if I can get them into a place where it's not going to reflect. There you go. So these are, I call them 1210. And yellow. And this is perfectly fine for these. These are the only two I've got, so I've only got one shot at this. And I've got a crimping tool to crimp that with, which I got this one from, well, you can tell where I got it from, actually. I got it from Maplin. I can't put a link to that in the description because Maplin went out of business, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame because I always like to go in there. One of my favourite shops, I think, was Maplin. It was actually, Maplin is where I bought this from. Yes, they sold Baofengs back in the day as well. So I bought that from there. Right, let's not get too distracted. So let's get these wires stripped. So I need to strip the ends of these. I'm going to do it off the camera because doing it on camera is not ideal. So we've got the red and the brown. Now the difference between these and the power pole ones is that these have got these little sleeves on them. So you just put the wire through. Doesn't matter which way around these go either, because these are exactly the same. So it just goes through and then into the crimping tool. Let's bring that back into focus. Now, if you've not ever used one of these crimping tools to crimp these on, I've just used a pair of pliers, I'll show you something. So each section there is coloured, and also you'll notice, if I just tip that up, that each section has a slightly smaller section and then a slightly bigger section in the back, which means you put that in, supposed to put that in, I think it's facing, would probably be better if it was facing the other way. Let me just do that. I'm just messing about off camera here just to try and position this in the best way so you guys can actually see. So we've got the crimping tool, 3 colours, matches the colour of the insulation on the actual crimp itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in there so that the smaller section on this is in the same place as the smaller section on here. So I'm just going to grab it slightly with the tool. I'm going to make sure that's actually properly level because it isn't properly level in there. So that's now level in there. I'll see if I can focus on that for you. Right, so the crimp's now in there. The wire's just popped out. That's one of the drawbacks of this kind of thing. So I'm going to try and get the wire back in there without obviously spreading all the strands. If I can't get the wire back in there, then I'll have to release the crimping tool, because as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm only going to get one go at this. So I'm going to actually will release the crimping tool and we'll get the wires back in there. These are actually quite fiddly to do, so let's do that again. So these are the 1210 ones. So there's a little bit of the copper sticking out of there, but I'm not too bothered by that because this is just for me. If I was making these up for people, I would probably do a much tidier job. and also wouldn't use red and brown. So we've got the crimping tool again, and this time I'm going to squeeze the handle down without trapping my thumb in it. That would be very good. Okay, and that is now crimped on. So now I've got to do the same with the brown wire, which is actually our negative, which is actually our black wire. This is very confusing, but you get where I'm coming from. So again, make sure none of the strands are going to escape, because if the strands escape, then it's not ideal. And pop it into the crimp. Now, again, I've got the wires slightly sticking out a bit on this, but again, because it's just for me, it's not for anybody. It's not. I'm not selling it. It's not being sold commercially. I would probably trim that down a bit. These crimping tools have paid off because I found that I've never really had anything fail with the crimping tools. So I'm just going to see if I can bring that into shot for you. Okay, here we go. Just checking that's all lined up. The wire's not going to slip out at any point. It shouldn't do. And we are crimped. So we've got one last job to do. Well, I think it's one last job anyway. And I'm going to grab a cable tie. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this cable tie, because I do this a lot with Powerpole connectors once I put them on. Put the cable tie around here. I don't need to put it around the other end, because that's going on to the power supply, which I will show you shortly actually. I will have to trim that off. These are a bit overkill, but this is the only pair of snips I've got because my little red ones have disappeared. Yeah, we're good with that. The next time you'll see this is in the shack, connected to the power supply. So let's go to the shack and connect it to the power supply. Right, now we're in the shack, and I've brought this with me, and there's a reason for that. So I've got power supply, switch it back on. I've just switched it off. So the idea is this will plug into the input of the Fuser-6. So now it's plugged into the input of the Fuser-6. Now this is very clever because it can tell you if you've got your wires the right way round or not before you connect anything else. So if I connect the wires up the correct way, we should, if I can show you that, get a green LED. But if I was to quote unquote accidentally plug them on the wrong way, get a red LED. So we can't connect these backwards without noticing it. Because you connect them backwards, that'll go red, you stop. You won't blow your radio up. And that's a good thing. The idea of this though is I'm going to unplug it from the Fuser-6 and I'll turn off the power supply just briefly while I do this. If I remove the covers off the binding post of this power supply, this is one of the Mydel ones from Martin Lynch and Sons. It's a 30 amp rated power supply, I believe, which is actually more than adequate to run my 991A. So the idea is we'll put these ring terminals over the binding posts. So I'll do it one at a time. It doesn't matter which way round I put them on as long as the power's off. If the power was on, I'd put the red one on first and then the black one, because that's something that I've got in the habit of doing, because that's how you would normally connect a jump starter to a car battery, or maybe even connect the car battery itself, so that way you won't get sparks. I can now connect that up like that, and then we'll turn the power supply on. It does make a little bit of a bang when it switches on. And then I'll plug that into the Fuser-6. And there we go. That's now on this power supply. So if I turn the power off, just give it a couple of seconds. As soon as the capacitors inside the power supply start discharging, that green LED should go off. There we go. It's got quite dim now. It should go out any minute now. There we go. Now switch the power back on. And that's it working. That means I can now connect anything I want into any of these sockets, provided it's within the current capabilities and the fuse rating. So these two are like the high outputs, and these are the three low outputs. Well, they all have a common bus bar down one side. Great for distributing your power from your battery or your power supply. Get this disconnected, because I don't need it connected to this now. It's very simple to make. Power pole connectors along with the crimping tool, easily obtainable from SOTABeams. They're actually proper Anderson Powerpole connectors. One of these fake rubbishy things. The ring terminals I'm using are ones from Halfords. The crimping tool, I'm not sure where you would get that these days, with Maplin having closed down many moons ago. The Fuser-6 is also SOTABeams product. So there's a bit of a SOTABeams theme going on here, I think. Crimping tool for the power pole connectors, where the power pole connectors come from. The wires from Halfords, these are from Halfords. Cost me absolutely nothing to make because I had all the parts already in stock. And I'm quite pleased with that. So let's go back to the dining table. I won't take... Oh yes, I will take the Fuser-6 with me. So we'll go back to the dining table. And that is the making of an adapter to convert power pole to ring terminals to use on your power supply. So that's not taken me long. As I said just before there, whilst we were in the shack, it took me all the parts that I've got here that were already in stock. I had the ring terminals in stock. They were my last two. The power pole connectors in stock. They were my last two. The wire in stock, I've got a fair bit more of that. And I do keep wire and all sorts spare. And I did have another pair of strippers on standby should the need have arisen. These work like the wire goes in and you squeeze a handle. I don't mind these too much. I actually prefer them to the other type. These are actually from Lidl. They do have positions for crimping those ring terminal or another crimps that are insulated like that. But I wouldn't recommend them. I'd prefer this crimping tool like that. So then crimping the power poles is done with this. And that's it really. And it works. I can pop this straight onto the end of the 991A and just put the power supply into it. It would probably work in reverse as well, but I would highly not recommend that. I'd highly not recommend using the power pole end as the source of power. Just use the ring terminals as the source. Cost me nothing. If I had to buy the parts, it wouldn't cost me that much. It would just cost me a roll of wire or two. It would actually be two rolls of wire. One red and in this case one brown, or it would be one black. Although it wouldn't cost me the whole roll of wire to make it. It would cost me a fraction of that to make. Powerpole connectors, it would cost me just the 2 connectors. Though they usually come in a bag of 5 connectors, which is about 10 metal contacts, 5 reds, 5 blacks. Or you can get more or less than you need. The crimping tool would be a one-off purchase. If you don't have the crimping tool, you can solder the Powerpole connectors. Although, like I say, I prefer crimped connectors because I find them much more reliable, actually. And some people get by just crimping those coloured crimps with nothing more than a pair of pliers. I hope this was of some interest and informative. And that means I'm now set up to use this at home and also not at home. Because for not at home, I would take this out and connect the battery to that connector rather than this, which would be connected to the power supply. And the great thing about Powerpole connectors is there's no male or female connector. They just connect to each other. And I'll show you how they're connected actually. You can see that they connect something a little bit like that. So if you're not familiar with Powerpole connectors. And I like Powerpole connectors because it means you can't connect anything in reverse. Unless you somehow connect the battery end in reverse, which this thing stops you from doing anyway, as I demonstrated before. And that's available from SOTABeams as a kit as well. Comes with everything you need to build it. You can tell I've built this, but it's kind of built it in a bit of a haphazard fashion, but it still works. It's fine. It's electrically sound. I'm happy with it. And this is SOTABeams as well. Those are from SOTABeams. Basically, most of the parts involved in this build are from SOTABeams, with the exception of the wires, the cable tie, and these ring crimps. And personally, if I was going to recommend any connector for use out when you're out portable, I recommend Anderson Powerpoles. So, Paul, you know I am. Mike 0 Whiskey November Uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 metres, and PMR 446. And I don't do many project builds, but this was a nice quick one, and the video is just coming up to about half an hour. That's how long it's took me to do this whole video, so I'm happy with that. I'll get the computer on, I'll get this edited and uploaded to YouTube, by which time you will have seen it. And like I said, I've started channel memberships. This one is going direct to the public. It's not a early release. I'll be doing that hopefully with one of the next big videos, because this is just a little video. And yeah, it will be good if you want to join the channel and get some perks, but you don't have to if you don't want to. That's entirely up to you. So it's about 99p, I believe. I've set the support the channel membership, or an extra £2 gets you early access to every other video, hopefully, after this one. This one, like I say, you guys are getting it straight away, because it's probably going to be quite useful to some of you. Anyway, 7-3 for now, and I'll catch you in the next one.